President Johnson.
So you're finally here.
You've been expecting me?
I'm prepared to face the consequences of my betrayal.
What have you... What the...
You're a man?
Metal Gear Solid 2 was a much-anticipated sequel to Metal Gear Solid, and then was released in 2001 for the PlayStation 2, and later re-released in 2003 in an extended edition called Substance for Xbox, PC, and PlayStation 2. Later still, it was re-released in HD for the Metal Gear Solid HD Collection on the PS3, the Xbox 360, and PS Vita. I'll be covering the version introduced in the HD Collection. Metal Gear Solid 2's gameplay is similar to that of its predecessor, but with additional complexities, refinements, and a greater variety of controls and moves that make it a little bit more engaging and challenging, for better or worse. Like Metal Gear Solid, the objective is to stay hidden. You can punch, flip, and butterfly kick in addition to slapping the nuts of guards with your hands, the last one only being first-person exclusive. Speaking of which, unless you had played Metal Gear Solid for the PC, Metal Gear Solid 2 introduced the ability to aim and shoot in first person for added precision. You can still crawl while prone. Peeking around corners has been enhanced, and you can now roll. Make sure to be far away from stairs though. More complex moves like hanging from railings, holding up guards with a weapon, intimidating held up guards by aiming at their head or their head, shaking down guards for their items and then dragging their bodies out of sight are now possible. If you get shot, you're still able to use rations to refill your health, but bandages have also been added to stop bleeding that occurs when you get shot and your health is low. Another way to stop bleeding is by sitting around for a bit until your health bar turns blue. Besides lowering your health, bleeding out makes it easier for guards to find you, as they can follow the trail of blood that you'll leave behind you. It's not all peachy, as one element that hasn't aged well is Metal Gear Solid 2's spotty, pressure-sensitive controls. For me, it's nearly impossible to raise a rifle without shooting, and trying to raise a pistol without firing is like trying to defuse a bomb. While the guard's AI has seen substantial improvement since MGS1, they're still pretty nearsighted, and can't hear Snake's footsteps unless he steps on metal grates. The rest of the time, you can charge around at full speed without fear of being heard, even if you're a millimeter away from a guard. You can see their field of vision represented by a small cone on the Soliton radar in the top right corner. It goes offline in an alert, and it's the best way to tell what's going on around you out in the open, thanks to the fixed camera. The only thing that makes the guards a threat are the sheer numbers and their ability to knock you on your ass. That feels like it lays you out for an eternity. They don't call for backup immediately, meaning you can beat them up to prevent them from starting an alert. But if you knock them over, trying to hit them before they stand up can be really spotty, resulting in an all-expense-paid trip. If a guard is interrupted while calling, or doesn't give a status update, a small team is sent to investigate, which is a great way to discourage putting everyone to sleep. If you've played MGS2 before, then you're aware of how strong the opening is on the tanker, and how well it introduces all the new elements and changes made in MGS2.
The game abruptly restarts barely a quarter in as you're introduced to Big Shell. It too is well detailed, but makes a far less impressive first impression on first inspection when compared to the tanker level. Even the guards are less distinctive and memorable looking compared to how they appeared on the tanker, although this seems to have been done intentionally to support the game's underlying message. Speaking of messages...
Raiden, what's your status?
Colonel, I've got Emma Emmerich here. We've managed to avoid drowning.
Good job.
The cutscenes in Metal Gear Solid 2 are well shot, well framed, and stylish, but drag on far more than necessary, and often to say something really stupid like, what are those sticks in your hair? I'm not sure how often it's done intentionally to support MGS2's meta-narrative about diminishing returns and the nature of sequels, and how often it actually misses the mark unintentionally and in a way that doesn't complement its message. Whatever the case, it was far more engaging than what you typically find in other games in the past or at the time, and has become more relevant in recent times due to the subject matter involving internet censorship and the discussion and manner that it has explored, what with it being ahead of its time. The cinematics are completely rendered in-engine, minus a few scenes that use stock footage. These scenes blend in seamlessly with the actual gameplay. The characters are good at emoting for the most part, thanks to the detailed 3D models and the motion-captured animations. That said, sometimes the characters' faces don't exactly convey the emotions they're supposed to be feeling, but that could just be me. The characters' lips happen to flap out of sync sometimes. Actually, no, the characters' lips happen to match up with the words that they are speaking sometimes, but for the most part they flap out of sync.
Why don't you just let us handle the grunt work? You can tell us what to do over the radio, like in the original mission plan.
One of the reasons you might not notice it is because the performances are solid and able to draw you in a convincing manner, thus diverting your attention from the character's impressions of an upside-down waste bin. It's better than not moving them at all, and only tilting their heads up and down while speaking like the shaky potato-esque faces of MGS1. It doesn't greatly detract from the overall quality of the cinematics. It's worth pointing out that much of the story is revealed through dialogue over the codec, a high-tech radio thing in people's neck or ears that's powered by nanomachines, I think.
Whatever.
The action is paused when the codec screen comes up. You'll sometimes take calls right in the middle of a battle, and the codec screen itself is just a green-tinted, mostly static display featuring the faces of the two characters talking. Codec conversations aren't always as interesting to watch as the cutscenes, but thanks to the addition of physical models capable of conveying emotion, they can be a bit more engaging than they were previously. The strength of the story helps even if the calls can be long-winded and a bit too frequent at times. Speaking of interruptions, the stealth is often broken up by defusing bombs, swimming, and the expected boss fights and encounters. A lot of people that have reviewed the game already have gone into great detail about the story, for better or worse, and in some cases, I'm willing to bet, have outright spoiled the game's plot. I won't be getting too into detail, and for those who haven't touched an MGS game prior and don't know what to expect, trying to understand MGS2's story is like trying to chew gum with your ass. For those who are able to stay awake or have the patience to sit through the innumerable cutscenes and codec calls, you're in for a treat. Particularly those who have never played it and find themselves seeking out games like Spec Ops: The Line or Silent Hill 2. All of that said, if I don't bring up the elephant in the room, I would have ended the video 10 minutes ago and not have properly represented the game to boot. I'm talking about the infamous bait and switch, of course, involving a certain blonde-haired cartwheeling aficionado that you'll be playing as for 90% of the actual game. I'm sure everyone's aware of this now, but back in the day, all promotional material and trailers hadn't shown this character. He wasn't on the front or back of the case either. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about by now. Now, I'm not someone who's insecure with their masculinity or whatever, or easily emasculated by having to play as someone like Raiden. And playing as him didn't bother me back in the day, but I can't blame people that didn't like playing because of him. Raiden's got a bad rap as being insufferably whiny or annoying, in addition to being wholly unlikable. But he's not actually as bad as some exaggerations suggest. Trust me, if he were, I would be having a field day right now. That said, he often comes off as sassy, or is uncharacteristically angry or rude out of the blue, particularly when his girlfriend Rose is on the codec. For those of you who are hardcore MGS fans, I'm aware that some of this is intentional, but it can be really grating at times, and if his real name is supposed to represent more than just a name, it would have helped if he was more relatable and less of an ass. In more ways than one. And no, I don't think turning him into a ninja in later titles remedies the problem. If anything, it was done out of desperation. I'm not trying to hate on the guy who voiced Raiden, but I feel like if the performance was different or someone else had played him, it might have been easier to sympathize with him.
Did I tell you you could move?
You covered everything.
I read through to the end.
Cool. All right.
And kept you waiting, huh? Bait and switch aside, I feel like many other people have covered this game better than I ever could hope to. But at the same time, I wanted to give my own 2 cents on it. While I still think it's worth your time, I can't personally recommend it, and it may not be for everyone's taste. Overall, I think that Metal Gear Solid 2 is better observed as a piece of art than it is a game. Stuff like the underwater escort mission are particularly bad in my opinion. Yeah, you heard me. Underwater escort mission. Holy shit. In fact, whenever I think of replaying Metal Gear Solid 2, that's the one thing that sticks out in my mind. But in spite of that, I still think it's a worthwhile experience, even if you don't get to play as Snake.
The fully cinematics are completely... What the fuck?